Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about my reading in 2024, and specifically I want to go through my reading stats with you. Now, my cat has just entered the living room. I don't know, she probably hates it when I film, so I think she will leave again. Or she will start scratching the wall to annoy me. Very well. Okay, where was I? She left again. We're talking about some reading stats today, and I do have a bit of a migraine, so bear with me. My brain is very muddled, but we'll get through this one. I can do numbers. That's my actual job is doing statistics. So my reading goal, as every year, was 52 books, and in the end I managed to read 102 books, which was very exciting. Out of those 102 books, 40 were audiobooks, so it's almost half of what I read. In total, I managed to read 20,423 pages, and this amounts to about 1,701 page per month, and about 55.8 pages per day. And my goal is usually to read at least 50 pages a day, so that worked out quite well. Obviously, I have days where I don't read anything, and then I have other days where I read like 200 pages, so it evens out throughout the year. Page-wise, my best reading month was April. Usually that is the case because of Magical Readathon, followed by July and December. For some reason, December and July, I don't know, might have to do something with Game Night-a-thon. My worst reading month was January because I had a lot of health troubles in January. Now, for my audiobook time, I listened to 30,887 minutes of audiobook last year. This means that I listened to about 515 hours of audiobook, which is so much. And that is about 42 hours per month and 84 minutes per day, which also checks out because, yeah, I do listen to a little bit more than an hour of audiobook per day. My best audiobook month was November, followed by July and August for some reason. Not really sure why that is. And then my worst audiobook month was February, again because I had a lot of health struggles in the beginning of the year. Throughout the year, I managed to buy 55 books and borrow 38 books. We will go more into that in a second. I also had 8 rereads and 0 DNFs, even though there are very few books where I wish I would have just DNF'd them. When the moon hatched, it's when the moon hatched. Next, we're looking at some monthly stats for books read. I had my best reading month in December, where I finished 13 books, followed by October and April with 12 books each. And my least successful month book number-wise was January and November, where I each read 5 books. Oh, in June as well. And those were just months where I struggled a lot. In January, I said I had health issues. At the end of May, my grandpa passed away, so June wasn't a really great reading month for me. And in November, I just had a lot of stress at work and just mental health things because of that. For my buying of the books, this includes gifts. So I bought 55 books, as I said. The month where I received the most books were January, that's my birthday month, where I received 13 books or bought 13 books. And then December with 11 books. Again, some of those I bought and some were Christmas gifts. And my least amount of books I purchased in June, where I only got 1 book. With the books borrowed, it is quite even throughout the month. I don't have big peaks. I borrowed the most amounts of books in January. That was because I still had some leftover books from the year before that I logged for January with 5 books, and then also April with 5 books because I needed some books for prompts for the Magical Readathon. And then the lowest amount of borrowed books was in May, where I only borrowed 1 book. Then you may know that my big goal is a TBR reduction. In 2025, I actually want to reach that 0 TBR, but I also tracked kind of like my progress towards 0 TBR in 2024, so I wanted to go through that quickly. Now, I started the year with 47 books on my TBR. I finished it with 37 books on my TBR. So throughout the year, I reduced my TBR by 10 books. And this is quite different throughout the individual month. My best TBR reduction happened in August and June, where I reduced my TBR by 4 books each. And then my worst month was January, where I added 10 books to the TBR. Now, keeping in mind that some of those were like older library books I had checked out in the previous year and carried over. And then after January, my worst month was December, where I added 3 books to the TBR. But there is kind of like a trend of reducing my TBR between like 1 and 3 books per month. So I would like to get that number up higher in 2025. So per month in 2024, I reduced my TBR by 0.83 books. Not even 1 book per month. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit more about the books that I have read and a couple of stats for those books. First of all, with page length, I have 2 kind of trackers. I have one where I only track the physically read books, and then the one where I track all of my books. And for the physically read books, you can see that I do tend to read a lot in the like 300 page range, and do prefer like shorter books, but there were some really long books as well that I have read. A lot of those were audiobooks though, so it is a bit skewed when you look at the 2 different graphs. With reading format, most of the books I read are audiobooks, followed by paperbacks and then ebooks. I used my library a lot more this year for ebooks, so that number went up quite a bit, and that's also why I wished for a new e-reader for Christmas. And then hardcover is the rarest form of my reading, with only around 13%. When we look at the year the books were published, I do read a lot of recent reads. I read 19 books that were published in 2024 and a further 41 books that were published since 2020, so most of my reading is very recent. I managed to read a book from like every decade I track, except for the 1920s and the 1970s. Then my little tracker of shame is whether these books were TBR reads or books I acquired in 2024. And as you can see, I read a ton of books that I acquired new, 77, and only 19 of the books I read were on my TBR before 2024. Star rating wise, my average rating is a 4-star. It is actually 3.98 or something like that, so very close to 4 stars, which makes me very happy because it means that the books I choose to read are actually books that I also will enjoy. I have gotten like really good at like choosing the right books for my taste. I had 3 2-star reads, 1 2.5-star read, 6 3-star reads, 18 3.5-star reads, 43 4-star reads, 23 4.5-star reads, and 8 5-star reads. Those include rereads as well. If you want to hear more about those books, then I recommend you watch my video about all the books I've read, where I go through them by ranking. Age group, I definitely read mostly adult books with 83 adult, 18 YA, and 3 middle grade children's. I also do read a lot of standalones. I have 58 books that I classified as standalones, then we have 7 duologies, 8 trilogies, and 31 series that are longer. So this usually checks out that I have like half and half, because I do really like reading series completely, so I usually wait until like further books are out. Not all of the time, but most of the time. This year I have also only read 6 books in translation. I have read 98 books in English and 6 books in German. Unfortunately, 0 books in Italian, even though that is my goal, to at least read like 1 children's book in Italian. When we look at the languages these books were translated from, we have Japanese, Korean, English, and French. For genre, this is not very surprising. My favorite genre is fantasy. So I read 38 fantasy books. Then next we have horror with 11 books, and we have literary fiction and thrillers with 9 books each. And I have a couple of genres where I read very little from, like memoir and nonfiction. If you take those together, it is a little bit more, but it's like not something I read a lot of. Then for diversity, for 59 of the books that I have read, I did note down like one aspect of diversity for them. So mostly it was main characters that are people of color. So for example, I have 17 books about Black characters and 11 books about Asian characters. I also have 7 books about lesbians and 6 books that are LGBT in general, or also that have a poly situation going on. So that's quite fun. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit about the authors that I have read. Starting out with the gender, this is also not very surprising. It kind of looks the same every single year. We have 72 books by female authors, 28 books by male authors, and 4 books by non-binary authors. I do include trans authors as their gender. Then for race, this looked much better last year. I don't know, I didn't do a great job this year. I have 67 books by white authors and 37 books by authors of color. Now, if you are wondering why this is not 102 but 104 books for all of these stats, it's because I had started 2 books that are in the spreadsheet, but I hadn't finished them in time. So I'm too lazy to take those out right now. You can live with that. Then what is really fun is that I read 52 new to me authors and 52 authors I had read before. So it is an even split, very fun. For the continent where the authors were from, not surprisingly, 68 were North America, 24 were Europe, and only a small number from Africa, Asia, and Oceania. I have no idea how you say that in English. So not very diverse in that regard. And looking at the countries also, it's not very diverse. We have 66 from the US, 19 from the UK, and then a small few from other countries. Now for the diversity aspect with the authors, this is something that I find harder to track because I don't always know a lot about these authors. So I have tracked a diversity aspect for 46 of the authors that I have read. And mostly, again, that would be people of color, like Black authors and Asian authors. But with some authors, it is also known that they are gay or lesbian, or that they're Jewish, for example. Okay, now let's talk about the books that I have bought or received as a gift. As I said, I got 55 books, and out of these 55, 15 have been gifts and 40 I have bought myself. Most of those have been audiobooks that I listen to straight away. If you want to hear more about that, you can watch my book haul of 2024, where I go through all of the books and I have read pretty much all of them. Out of those 55 books, 43 were adult, 11 were YA, and 1 was a children's book. Genre-wise, we have 23 fantasy books, followed by 8 horror books and 8 thrillers. Out of all of these books, I have managed to read 47 already, and only 8 I haven't read yet. Looking at my spending for books, in total, I've spent €356 on books, which is kind of funny because if it would be €10 more, it would have been €1 for each day, which would have been fun, but it's not quite there yet. So in an average month, I spent about €29 on books, and per book, I spend about €8.9 because gifts don't cost me anything. The number is quite low. I spent the most amount on books in December, where I spent €50, and in April, where I spent €56. And I spent the least amount in June, where I only bought 1 audiobook. And last but not least, we have the stats for the borrowed books. As I said, I borrowed 38 books. Out of those, 22 were through Libby, 9 were from my library, and 6 were the Audible inclusive ones that I also count as borrowed because you don't own them, but you can listen to them without paying extra for the books. and then one was just available on the internet because it was a short story. Out of those 37, I have read 29 and I did not read 8. Age group wise, we have 31 adult books, 7 YA books and no children's books. 17 were fantasy, 6 were historical fiction and 5 were romance. So you can see that I do tend to borrow books in genres that are not my favorite usually, just because I don't like really spending money on them. And then I saved 282 euros throughout the year. That means I saved around 24 euros per month. And the month where I saved the most was October, where I saved around 38 euros, followed by April with 35 euros and December with 32 euros. And the month I saved the least was May, where I didn't have any library books that I've read. And that brings us to the end of this video. I hope this was fun to watch. I hope I covered all of the interesting things that you like to see in these videos. Definitely let me know how many books you've read and how much money you've spent on reading if you want to share that information in the comments. Also leave a like, I always appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!